What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Science Fictionary Podcast. Daniel, what's going on?
Uh, Not much. Loki and Black Widow, right?
Yep,
Been the biggest thing lately.
yep, for sure. So we're really kind of talking about the last two. We've kind of done the Loki stuff has been kind of weird with our summer schedule and not being able to get in here every week. And so we really got the last two episodes of Loki, and that's where we're going to start. And
Right.
so, I mean, overall, we have the whole series now. I mean, what did you think about it as a series overall?
I felt like I watched the entire series of Lost in 6 episodes. It's we've talked about this before. Y'all already know how I am about the time travel stuff and the different timelines and the rules they put in place for us just don't make sense. The TVA is a broken plot device. It really didn't work right. I had questions about how things worked in that world almost from the start. I do have a theory now after watching the whole series that I think helps make it make a little bit more sense. And I guess we can get to that after we talk about episodes 5 and 6. But I enjoy the characters. I'd said at one point I thought Sylvie could carry this show without Loki.
Mm-hmm.
I like their interactions together. I like the dialogue, the way it's written. I'm not a big fan of the overall plot of this show.
I mean, I really like it on one hand, but then when you really start digging into some of the ins and outs of the time travel and that stuff, it's a little bit convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the episodes. It's just that I feel like they overcomplicated some things just for the sole sake of bringing Kang into the MCU.
Yeah, which is cool. Like and I'm glad we've done that. And we all knew it was coming. So. And really, they kind of brought him into, and again, we haven't got to episode 6 yet, but they kind of brought him into the universe sort of by, there is another character in the comic books they call He Who Remains, and I'd really actually kind of forgotten about him. He's only been in like 5 or 6 books.
Right.
So just kind of taking that concept of who He Who Remains is and tying it into, Kang, it works. And really, the only telltale clue there of it being Kang is the fact that it's the same actor. I mean, it's obvious what they're doing. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And like I said, after episode 6, I did develop a theory that kind of helps me sort of make things make sense a little better.
Right.
But we can get to that as we're discussing the episode.
Yeah. So episode 5, I honestly think episode 5 might be my favorite episode of the season.
It is mine.
There's some big moments in that one. And, Richard E. Grant was fantastic. And it's great because you've got this really awesome version of Loki wearing that goofy
comic book outfit. We will say that is a 60s creation. That's a 60s comic book outfit. His outfit did change. Look a little more, but yeah, man, his original costume, it was, those bright colors and the big horns, and it looks cool on paper.
Yeah.
So
I love his perspective on the whole thing. Like, what is a Loki? He calls Loki's the god of outcasts. And really, you've got this situation where Loki is, and I'm curious to see if this is what I'm curious to see if we ever explore going forward, is why Loki. Because it seems like the way the timeline, the TVA is set up, they're specifically targeting Loki. Like
I didn't really. They had targeted a lot of Lokis, was the way it was put to us, but because he is the god of mischief, he's always causing mischief. He's always causing chaos, and really their entire their entire point of existing is to maintain order, and Loki is inherently chaos. So it just made sense that they would be pruning a lot of him.
Okay. But I love his perspective, and I love that he's kind of resigned himself to who he is, but he's still, like all Lokis, looking for his glorious purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But he's kind of moved past the just being mischievous.
Right.
Because I honestly think if I was going to take one scene in this show, if you said, is there a big, like, you know, when you talk about the big, important, great scenes in Marvel, is there one in this show?
That's it.
And it's that one. In fact, I would say that that's the biggest moment they've done in any Marvel TV show so far, is this moment with classic Loki, as far as just like spectacle.
Yep. When he did that, I got chill bumps.
Yeah. I mean, you know, creating this grand vision of Asgard. And of course, whoever did, I don't know who did the music for this show, but they really elevated their game for that episode. You know, we've been playing on this theme, Loki's theme, throughout, but he did some stuff where he kind of mixed Loki's theme. I think he went to a major key with it, and also gave it a little bit of the Ride of the Valkyries feel to it, and you know, kind of more triumphant version of Loki's theme.
Yeah,
and it's the whole scene is just pretty amazing.
No, I did. Like I said, I got chill bumps. Like that is it's not our Loki, but it's a Loki. That's a hero moment. You know, just this, because he told Loki earlier in the episode, he said the blades distract from our power.
Yeah.
You know, what you can do if you just focus on the illusion, and then we got to see it, and it was grandiose. It was exactly the way he said it was, because he's the one, he's the Loki who succeeded in killing Thanos, and he did it without the blades.
Right.
He created an illusion so real, he was able to trick Thanos and kill him. And, you know, like he said, he went off on his own, and his Nexus moment when they decided they had to prune him was whenever he missed Thor. So he had been through kind of this redemption thing we saw Loki go through in the movies too, where he was at that same place we saw Loki in Endgame.
Right.
And I liked that character, and I thought Richard E. Grant was a wonderful version of that character.
He really was, and again, it's sort of bizarre how much he actually looked like the comic book character.
It's crazy.
But a lot of good moments in that episode, but it sets up this thing. I love the ending of episode 5 with this very kind of high fantasy feel to it, with you've got the prince and the princess there looking at the castle at the end of time. And I just love the aesthetic. It's far and away my favorite episode of the season.
Yeah. No, I do. I enjoyed it. It was also my favorite episode, and mostly because of Richard E. Grant and because of the chill bumps I got whenever he did that. So I agree with you.
So, I mean, any other thoughts on episode 5? I mean, that's obviously the big. The last 2 episodes are very narrative heavy on just kind of telling us, kind of Loki trying to find his place.
Right.
Loki coming to the realization, when they're watching classic Loki, do his thing, he says, I think we're a lot more powerful than we realize. Like,
right.
So I do think that we're going to see that more powerful version of Loki down the road because he's now aware.
Right. And we saw him, do an enchantment. He and Sylvie enchanted the creature together. So he's already kind of learning that, there's a lot more abilities within him that he's never tapped.
Right.
So that'll be interesting. We're getting a season 2. So it'll be interesting however many seasons we get to see that kind of stuff develop. I like the little Easter eggs in episode 5. I like seeing Throg.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's
Throg Thor, and he's in a jar, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
The Thanos copter, which was looked really good. Like if you can take something that's even goofy for a comic book and make it look good on screen,
right?
I like that. I like to get in the little Easter eggs.
Yeah.
We joked kind of about Alligator Loki, and Alligator Loki, I want to say he's kind of a badass, but really he's just an alligator. He bites stuff, right? That's what they do. So, that I think adding Alligator Loki was pretty brilliant because that was funny. They did a good job with that stuff.
Well, they did. There were so many great comic book references in here, whether it be just the things, we like Thanos' copter, but we also saw President Loki and some other variants of Loki from the comics. And then we saw some stuff that was a little bit more.
Oh, wait, I forgot. Did we not like the villain Loki of this show being a freaking politician? Does that not fit Loki perfectly? Does he not feel like he would be a slimy politician sometimes? I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah,
I did. I got a chuckle out of that. That was hilarious.
So in addition to the comic book references, we got some really cool kind of things that kind of blur the lines between fiction and reality. The battleship. I don't know if you caught that, what that ship was.
Yes.
It's the Philadelphia experiment.
Yes.
So a lot of really, really cool references going on in this version, in this episode.
Another allusion to an urban legend that, let's see what really happened kind of deal.
Yeah. So lots of cool stuff, but it's, I really kind of felt like that's what that episode was just kind of them exploring a little deeper what Loki's purpose is.
Right.
And lots of cool Easter eggs. That's really sums that episode up, but it made for a good episode.
It did. No, it was very good. We both already said it was our favorite episode.
Now, what to me is an interesting decision is, I mean, that's what culminates our action for this show is the end of episode 5. I mean, we get a little bit, but not much. I mean, basically action in episode 6 is Sylvie killing the one who remains.
Yeah. Episode 6 is a lot of finally getting answers, such as they were.
So to me, it was an interesting choice to culminate your action. Of course, it's not an action show. It's not. And so I do understand why you get that out of the way and then you move into your narrative. But basically, episode 6 seems to me to just be a 45-minute long explanation of where Kang comes from.
Yeah, I mean, sort of get the final truth about what the TVA is and where the multiverse is and all this kind of stuff. But really, though, we still don't know how much truth there is to that. I mean, it kind of truth as far as where Kang is going to come from.
Right.
I don't know that we call the character we saw in episode 6 Kang, because he doesn't call himself that. You feel like it's supposed to be one of his variants.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely a variant, but doesn't he when he's... I was a little... Because I think he's supposed to be a little bit of a... I think he's mentally a little bit messed up. He's been alone for eons in this castle, and so...
Where's another thing? That's another one of the questions about how this show works in the first place was... It's hard to watch the show and it seems like everything moves linearly, but they can go to any point in time and any timeline they want to at any time. So like He Who Remains says, he was a scientist in the 31st century of his timeline. I'm back to getting confused again.
Yeah.
Like how do we even measure? How do you even measure time when you're in a place that you can go to any time in any reality? Is time measured separately in the TVA than it is anywhere else? Right. Where do you even get the idea of eons from?
Right. Well, see, that's kind of the thing is, he exists in this, they call it the void at the end of time.
Void at the end of time.
But the way that it's visualized is a castle at the center of a circular loop of time.
Yep. Yeah, which in the comic books is where He Who Remains resided, was the Citadel at the end of time, is what they called it.
Okay.
But yeah, like you say, the way it's visualized in the show, all the timelines are literally kind of moving around. Like you can look out the window and see the timelines branch. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, what did you think about that? Because I've got some theories on this, and I'm sure you do as well. We reach a point where, okay, so is time linear? Is time circular? I mean, that's an age-old debate, scientific debate, anyway.
Or is it what?
Or do we perceive it one way, or do people in the timeline perceive it one way and he perceives it differently? Because he has access to all points of time at any time. He's right. Literally experiencing all points in time. That's what we get with the voices.
It's not a matter, right? Well, no, and what we've done in this show is it's not a matter of it being linear or being circular. It's a matter of it all being predetermined. Mm-hmm. Is really what it is. This happens in the year 1980 of this timeline, and this happens in the year 3500 of this timeline, and it is what it is, and I can go see that event or I can go see that event. We don't really get into whether or not they can change time because it's like it's already happened. In an end game, the idea was once you go back in time, that time then becomes your future. Right. So you're not really changing anything because from your perspective is your future. Well, yeah, but did you not? This has always been the problem with time travel shows, because it's always been a problem with a theory of time travel anyway, is if you went back in time and changed something, would you affect your own past? Well, Endgame says no. This show tells us it just causes a branch.
Right.
Which Endgame kind of touched on too, that they, so.
Right, which is all interesting in that it does give us.
I'm sorry.
Well, what it does give us is everything that we've had so far in the MCU is part of this one timeline. So they told us that that's the way it was supposed to happen. So I guess they're establishing everything that we've done so far as the sacred timeline, and now have the ability to go explore things in these branches. But I mean, they've had trouble with this, with the director of with the directors of Endgame saying one thing and Feige saying another on whether Steve went back to the same timeline or whether he's now in a branch timeline.
Right.
And of course, the other problem with the time travel is just problematic. It's why when I do time travel, I like things like, Back to the Future or Bill and Ted that don't take their time travel theories too seriously.
And they keep it simple. You got a little simple explanation, you go forward, and it's easy to spin disbelief that way. But when the entire plot revolves around the nature of time, period, it's hard to ignore. And I feel like every time we talk about this show, we have this discussion. I'm sorry, people. I know y'all probably getting tired of us here and talk about it, but
it's literally what the show is, though.
I know. So I don't know. We're gonna finish talking about episode 6 outside of this conversation, though, right? Because
yeah.
We got to. I don't know is the answer to the question. I like the way the Citadel's depicted. Mm-hmm. I like it was pretty cool. It was pretty neat that you're looking at all the timelines and stuff revolving around him, which, oh, by the way, again, there's only supposed to be one timeline. The whole idea of the TVA was every time the sacred timeline tries to branch, we prune it. So we stay with one timeline. But again, that's something that's never made sense for the whole freaking show. Otherwise, where did the variants come from in the first place?
Right.
But anyhow, I got a theory about that. But anyway.
All right. So there's one thing regarding the visualization of time as a circle. And of course that works if that's what they want to do. I mean, that goes back in, and that goes heavily back to Loki's mythology and Norse mythology. Is, the whole idea of Loki basically causes the end of time and the beginning of, and then time to start over.
Mm-hmm.
The ring theory and circular time. And so there he mentions, we get to a point where he says, I don't know what happens beyond here, right, beyond this point. So are we seeing that time in the MCU is circular and we're starting over? And so now he doesn't know what happens anymore now that we're starting over? Or
and it hadn't occurred to me like that. I hadn't even thought of it being circular. I just thought of it having a beginning point and an end point, but apparently it was all predetermined and he's just trying to keep it clean. Mm-hmm. Was sort of the way I thought the show was leading us to believe. I didn't even think about the circular theory, which I don't
know. So I'm confused. I'm a little confused by it, but you're trying to address time in multiple different ways in this show, and the way that different groups are experiencing that time. And unless they can come back and clarify it down the road, I think they've made a big giant mess out of their time travel theory.
Yeah, no, and we don't need all the time travel anyway. No, I didn't need the TVA. I didn't need the Citadel at the end of time. I did not actually. All right, I need a Loki show. I'm not going to lie. I wanted it. I'm glad we've got it. I didn't need this. I don't need a show to explain to me where the multiverse come from. All we had to do was go, hey, there are parallel universes. Mm-hmm. We've never encountered them before. They've just always been there. Yeah. Now, let's go have some adventures in them. That's all they had to do.
Right. And you could have had the whole multiversal war going on, and somehow ours has just stayed out of it. And now suddenly something has changed. I mean, that's a real good reason for the Eternals to show up, because they still hadn't told us, we've still got to find out why they showed up now.
Yeah.
So
we didn't need all the exposition this show has tried to give us. Yeah. I didn't need to see the multiverse created. I just need to know that it was there.
And they still could have
some adventures. That's all they needed to do. The rest of this has been nonsense.
Yeah.
I sound stupid to say that I enjoy the show.
No, because
and then say that I think that it's nonsense, but it's true. I enjoy the moments of the show. Mm-hmm. I think the overall story arc of the show is confusing and preposterous and unneeded, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you separate the time travel theory from just the narrative, then it's a great show. But the problem is that they still leave you with this trying to unravel how the theory works. And I think they may have contradicted themselves a couple of times. And,
that's every episode.
So
every episode.
Yeah. But again, this is, of course, we always say on this show, I think we all kind of get down on, not liking, no, I don't need time travel in my sci-fi, but there are some great time travel movies out there, but they're the ones that keep it simple. And I think the greatest example of that might be the Terminator series.
To a certain extent.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Terminator and Terminator 2 do it great.
It's pretty clean.
It's simple. They don't overthink it.
It was a neat twist in Terminator 1 that it's actually a causal loop.
Mm-hmm.
You just went from there, and they stayed consistent with that. Everything they did going forward would cause, it made sense. They kept it tight. They kept it clean. The first two movies, actually, even the third one. A lot of people don't like the third movie, but as far as the time travel in it still making sense, it did. You didn't screw with it too much. When you got to these last two movies, Terminator Salvation is what it is. That's actually set in the war with the machines. So that's completely outside of time travel. Not worried about that one. There is no time travel element to that movie.
Right.
But these last two movies, why are we talking about Terminator and a Loki review show? But yeah, these last two movies, they really tried to screw with Genesis, especially. That was like you were in an alternate timeline of the original movies, anyhow, and it just like you said, it's a good example of how to overextend your time travel and screw it up.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what they've done here. Now, again, I still like the show. I still really like the show. I like the character development. I like the moments in the show. I just wish they hadn't tried to go so complex with the way everything worked. I think they could have simplified it a lot, and it still would have been just as good, and we all wouldn't be sitting around scratching our heads talking about time travel instead of what the show was really
talking about the show, right. Agreed.
But as far as episode 6 itself, I mean, did you have any moments you really liked? And I know you've got some theories on some of the stuff.
There's not really a great moment like there is in episode 5. There's nothing like that. It left us with some questions and some good setup. Where is Ravonna gone? What are the documents that Miss Minutes gave her from He Who Remains? Like, I guess we get to explore that in season 2. And then, of course, just the end of it with the, and this is kind of where my theory comes in, and I'm going to get into this a little bit, because here's what happened. Just to review the very end of it. Sylvie opens a portal with the TEM pad, pushes Loki through it, and he comes out at the TVA, right? So just follow me. He comes out at the TVA. We see B-15 and Mobius watching the stuff branch, talking about it's branch, there's no turning back now. That seems like we're still current in what we've been watching, right?
Right.
That's still current in the those are still the same versions of the characters we've been watching. Then Sylvie kills He Who Remains. Keep in mind, she sent Loki back to the TVA before she killed He Who Remains. Loki runs out of the room, goes to find Mobius. By the time he finds Mobius, he and B-15 are discussing the branching timelines. Does he want us to stop them all? She goes, well, we can't stop most of them now anyway. And Loki starts talking to them, and Mobius doesn't know who Loki is. You're an analyst, right? What division are you from? He looks, and there's a statue of Kang. So the implication there is Sylvie kills He Who Remains, and she changed time, apparently. But here's my question. It makes sense for Loki to still be cognizant and aware of everything that's happened before if he's outside of the timeline when it changes. But he wasn't. He was in the TVA the same time B-15 and Mobius were. Correct?
Right.
So why all of a sudden did their memories go away and now they're in whatever timeline's been created, but it didn't affect Loki? So here's my theory. I think Loki's at a different version of the TVA than the one we've been watching the whole show. I do think the entire time we've been watching this show, there's still been more than one timeline. But none of them has gotten out of control, because in each little mini universe and in each, I don't like keeping using the word timeline, but whatever, but in each timeline has its own version of the TVA. And they're either keeping their own timeline under control, or I think maybe they're pruning each other's. I think that's the way that we're still kind of fighting this multiverse war is, I think, different versions of He Who Remains and Kang and whoever that character is. And whatever version of the TVA Loki's in now, Kang never came up with the conceit of the timekeepers. He just said, screw it, I'll just rule it myself. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So that's where Loki is now. That's what I think is going on, because the TVA is supposed to exist outside of time and is not affected by anything that happens in the timelines. And okay, so if that weren't true and it is affected by Sylvie killing He Who Remains, then Loki should have been affected too, because he was in the same place Mobius and B-15 were, but he's not affected. I think he's in a different version of the TVA.
I do like that theory, and we talked about that a little bit the other day, that basically each variant of this character has something like the TVA that's essentially the front line for the multiversal war.
Yeah.
I do wonder, though, if that's when the timeline changed, when she kills the One Who Remains, is that when time changes? Or is it when we pass this point where he's controlling it and we begin to see things branch where he doesn't know what's happening anymore? So if that's the case, then you change things there. She sends Loki back. Things change things change at the TVA.
Things changed just before Loki went back.
Just before he shows up. So I don't know. I like, both theories seem to hold.
But you still got, but after Loki comes back, you've still got Mobius and B-15 having a conversation that seems relevant to the story, to what we've watched. That seems like they're aware of what's going on with the whole no turning back thing, and they said they didn't want to turn back. They knew what was happening. That conversation leads you to believe they knew what was happening.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a complication of their time travel theory.
Yeah. Because
at the point where it changes, they become different people. They basically are restarted as far as who they are and who they know. The interesting thing to me in all that is they don't know who Loki is.
Right. They would recognize a Loki. Not.
Right. So that, to me, that's the most confusing part of that, is there's something that Kang has done that's changed Loki's impact on the multiverse.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see where they go with that. And, I like your theory, but I'm still not sure. For me, it's trying to figure out when the time changed. And then why don't they recognize a Loki when that's always been their biggest target?
And actually, has Marvel's theory of time since Endgame not been to lead us to believe that they can't actually change the past by what they do?
Right.
So right. They've honest to God, they've screwed up.
They have. And like I said, and I think you said this, it sounds kind of weird to say, but I really like the show.
Yeah.
I like the characters. I like the story. I just wish it wasn't so they hadn't overcomplicated the sci-fi elements.
Yep.
Of the show.
Yes. Me too. We agree.
Do you have anything else on episode 6 of Loki? I will say this. I didn't know, I never really was not familiar with the actor who's playing Kang and who played the One Who Remains. I'm pretty stoked about that at this point.
Yeah. No, I am too.
In fact, I'm really excited now after seeing the way he played that character to see how he plays different variations.
If he can take that little bit of Unhinged 3 or 4 steps farther and give us Kang, it'll be really good.
So I'm really excited to see where that goes, and I hope that there's something that they can give us down the road that clarifies some of this. Either that, or they just freaking retcon some of this down the road and simplify it.
Yeah,
that basically honestly, everyone
just ignore it. Just ignore it. The multiverse exists. This guy named Kang's trying to rule them all, and we're gonna go stop him. We're gonna go have some adventures in these alternate universes. That's all we need to know. We didn't need all this other crap.
Right. So one question before we wrap up, and this is something that I've been thinking about since they first announced, or since WandaVision came out as our first MCU TV series. It's like, I've liked all 3 shows, but they seem to hold back from just the really, really big earth-shattering moments. In some ways, things that would drastically alter a character, or not giving us Kang in this series. And this whole idea of, yeah, we're going to do these series.
They're all set up for something bigger.
They're all tied to the MCU, but Kevin Feige's statements about you don't need to see any of these shows to understand what's going on in the MCU.
Right. Yeah, they're all set up for something else. But
right,
like Kevin said, that it actually can't be that too impactful of setup, because, like you just mentioned, Kevin said you're not gonna be lost if you watch the movies without watching these shows.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a really, really. I mean, I'm sitting here running a tiny, insignificant podcast, and he's running the largest movie empire on the planet.
Yeah, the biggest entertainment company in the world.
But it does seem like that's a really strange way to approach it, to basically say up front, these shows don't really matter.
No, I don't think so. I think it's smart in a way. Look, these shows are here. They're really good. We really want you to watch them. You'll be entertained. We got all these great characters that we're going to give them some more character development. If you enjoy these characters, you'll enjoy these shows. But at the same time, you've got a movie-going audience that doesn't necessarily watch a lot of television.
All right.
So you don't want to.
I just don't want them.
I think you would alienate some people if you made it to where they had to buy your $8 a month subscription service and watch these television shows you wouldn't otherwise be interested in, just so they can avoid thinking that they're going to be lost when the next film comes out that they do want to see. I think it's smart. I think it's fine. I've got no problem with that at all, because then you're also sitting there going, so whenever this movie comes out, is somebody going to go, well, shit, I didn't watch that show yet. I'm not even going to bother with the movie because I'm going to be lost. No, you don't want people feeling that way.
True. That's a fair point. It's just, I don't want that to be the thing that holds these shows back from having big, great moments.
But we've had some.
We have. We have.
You can have the big, great moments just with a lot of character development. WandaVision is, look where Wanda is now compared to where that show started.
True.
And that's something you can do in the show and still not have anybody lost when they go see Doctor Strange, because she'll show up and wow, she's just more powerful. And you don't need the explanation to make it work in the film. But if you want to see how she got there and the emotional shit she went through, go watch this really great TV show.
Well, and that's what I do like, is that they're telling a more personal stories.
Yeah.
And I do really like that, because you can't do that often in a movie, especially a movie that's expected to be your big blockbuster type, summer action flick. There's only so much room for personal story in those. So I do like that you have some separation there.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I'm really liking them. I'm still not sure. I'm really not sure. The only thing that keeps this from being my absolute favorite of the three shows so far is the convoluted time travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. I mean, this is the one with the best. This has the best cast as far as actors. As far as like, I mean, I think the other casts are great, but I think that Tom Hiddleston. I mean, if you're going to say I've got Tom Hiddleston and Richard E. Grant in this one, like, you're a step above the actors in the other two shows. Anthony Mackie might be that guy one day, but I'm not going to say Anthony Mackie's that guy right now. I really like Anthony Mackie. I really like Sebastian Stan, but Sebastian Stan's no Tom Hiddleston.
No, he's not. But I mean, okay, so if we're going to talk about just acting talent in a show, if
The only actor in one of the other shows, Paul Bettany is a brilliant actor.
Paul Bettany is an Academy Award level actor who's never gotten that kind of recognition, but he doesn't mean he doesn't deserve it. The character of Vision isn't that kind of character. Doesn't mean he's not that kind of actor. So I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to compare Falcon and Winter Soldier's cast to this one. But we can go through them if you want to. Tom Hiddleston, Richard E. Grant, Owen Wilson, Sophia DiMartino, who has, through the course of this show, has gotten herself to a certain level, but she wasn't for this show.
Right.
At all. That's what I said before. How in the hell has this woman been in this business this long and no one knew who she was?
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Brilliant.
I'm excited for her because I think now she has elevated herself to a point. I think you're going to see her all. Well, I think you're going to see her popping up all over the place now.
Right. But then I can look at WandaVision, and I will admit there are a couple of actors in that show that I have a higher opinion of than most people. I just do. I've always loved Paul Bettany, and I know you have a lot of respect for Paul Bettany too. So you have to put him on that same level with Tom as far as acting talent with Tom Hiddleston and Richard Grant.
I agree with that one.
Okay, Elizabeth Olsen. Now
she's going to get there. I don't think she's.
The thing with Olsen is her first anything that put her on the map was the MCU.
Right.
You know what I mean? She's young, and there wasn't a whole lot of acting credits on her page before this anyway. Doesn't mean she doesn't have the talent. I think she's sometimes in that show, kind of like Sophia DiMartino. In that show, I think she showed her acting ability on another level. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I have a higher opinion of Kat Dennings than everybody knows. I got a higher opinion of her than David does. David can't stand her for some reason. I like that character. I like that actress. I think Kat Dennings is very talented. Catherine Hahn. These are different kinds of actors. So Catherine Hahn is a comedic actor.
Right.
But she's very good at it. The woman's talented. So I think Scarlet Witch had a very good cast.
I think they
all. I can still take your point and give the edge to Loki because of Tom Hiddleston, Owen Wilson, and Richard E. Grant. You're not getting to. I don't know. Well, do I give Owen Wilson too much credit?
No, Owen Wilson is an underrated actor. Most people only think about him in roles like his role in Zoolander. You know, that's what most people think. And granted, like, as far as his range, the dude's got a lot of range.
He just doesn't take a lot of dramatic or action roles. Me and you talked about when the show first started. We talked about Behind Enemy Lines. Mm-hmm. Anybody at it? Behind Enemy Lines is about a 25-year-old movie now.
Yeah.
But if you have not seen Behind Enemy Lines yet, go watch it.
And if you don't think Owen Wilson can act, go watch that movie.
Yeah.
But I would say that Owen Wilson in this show, showed some of his range.
Mm-hmm.
He's a lot of people think of him as just a comedic actor, and I think that's what he really likes doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he does it. But the guy can't act.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the MCU finally coming back to theaters.
Yes. Which there's a good tie in here because we were talking about the shows not really leading into the movies. You know, like Kevin said, you weren't lost if you didn't watch the shows. Do we want to jump all the way to the mid-credit scene? Because we do now have a movie that tried to tie you back into a show.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, that's a different step.
Yeah. Are you talking about sending
Yelena
to hunt down Hawkeye?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because it's coming. So yeah, they tied a movie directly into a TV show, and I love it.
Yep. And that is that freaking character, dude. I am so happy. First of all, I love Scarlett Johansson. Don't make any secrets about that. I love this character, and I was sad during Endgame when she died. But if we're gonna have any character to kind of take that role on, I am glad it's this one.
Yeah,
she is Natasha with more attitude, right? Like she's Natasha, but she's full of sarcasm and anyway. No, this is the breakout character of this movie, and
for sure.
I think she's going to be around the MCU for a long time, and I'm happy for it.
As far as new characters, that's by far the one that I'm the happiest with.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk. I mean, just overall, I mean, kind of what did you think about this movie, and like, you know, kind of in your hierarchy of MCU movies? I mean, for me, it's mid-tier Marvel fare. Like, it's better than the worst stuff, and it's not. I can't put it up there with Civil War or Winter Soldier or Endgame. It's just, but those are a different kind of movie. Those are just bigger movies.
Well,
but I do like a lot, but I think there's some things I don't like about this movie that keep me from putting it in that upper echelon.
Right. For a very long time, Winter Soldier was my favorite MCU movie. And some days I think it still is.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those that you kind of go, oh, I think this might be my favorite movie, and you go back and you watch it, and you go, this is such a good movie.
Remember, right? Because like you'll go watch Endgame and go, best Marvel movie ever. And the next day, Winter Soldier comes on TV, and you're like,
yeah,
forgot.
But it's kind of like going back and watching to the 2008 Iron Man.
Yeah,
it's like every time I watch that, I'm like, I'm not sure this still isn't the best MCU movie. Like
it's good. No, Black Widow, I'll put it in my top tier, but it's a matter of where you cut the tiers off. I mean,
right?
Because it's.
I guess I would say, like, the way I normally approach it, because there's too many movies, it's almost impossible to rank the MCU. It's too big. And so I generally say, does it crack my top 5? This movie wouldn't crack my top 5.
And I haven't even really put that much thought into it. I know I really liked the movie. And, you know, we just spent a few minutes talking about Winter Soldier. It naturally kind of has that Winter Soldier feel to it. We're not dealing with a lot of overly superpowered characters. It's a spy, espionage, action movie.
Right.
And I love those kind of movies. So that works well for me. And love the characters and the family dynamic to it. I thought played really well. Actually, I think they did a good job at that. I know you and I had a similar issue where some of that's concerned, because there's one character that all they played that character for was comic relief within the family. Like, right. It was just. But that being said, and we're talking about Red Guardian, right?
Yeah.
Played just straight for comic relief. He didn't really do anything except that this is what it feels like they're trying to do with him. A bunch of dad jokes, which is fine. We're dealing with in some ways, a family comedy. Let's get some of that in there. I liked it. It plays good enough. You got some dad jokes. Then you get the absentee father who is now trying too hard. And you get the guy past his prime, still trying to relive his glory days. Those are all sitcom dad family comedy tropes. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And they played him for all three of them, and it's all they played him for. There was one moment, though, but I'm going to let you, I didn't mean to cut you off. There was one moment when they were in the farmhouse, and he goes to talk to Yelena alone, and she got mad at him. And earlier in the movie, he had told them, all I ever did was love you girls, and I tried to give you make the best opportunity for you. And that plays off like bullshit the time he says it.
Yeah.
But whenever Yelena blows him off, tells him to go away, and he stands up and he starts singing that song because he remembered that song. He remembered it was important to her. And I thought that was important because that reinforces the idea that, you know what, he did love him. And in his own way, he did think he was doing what was best for him.
I mean, that's the thing. They were undercover for 3 years. He was raising these children for 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, of course he got attached.
Yeah, he did. But they play most of the movie with him acting like that was just a job to him. He didn't care. But they used that one moment to show you that, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. Well, I think some of that is playing on the idea that Russians, especially Cold War era Russians, are just harder people.
Yeah.
He would be a lot less likely to be the guy that, tells his kids he loves them.
Well, yeah.
Then that. So I think some of that's just playing on people from that time.
I mean, it's the idea that he let the Red Room take them.
Yeah.
But on some level, it was a mission. But he also really did care about them and think that in his mind, that's what their life was. Who's going to put them in the best situation to succeed in that life, which in a weird dad kind of way is a very dad thing to do, right? So it plays well. But that was really, to me, like the only moment where I felt like they let him step outside of just being a big freaking goofball.
Yeah.
Because also in that moment, whenever the Red Room attacks, he tells Yelena, get down, and she actually does. This is one of the baddest women on the planet. But in that moment, her daddy's protecting her. Mm-hmm. So I liked how they played that, but that was the only, like I said, that was the only moment where they didn't just play him as a
he never really got that moment. I mean, we kind of did. It's if you go back to the movie, if you go back to The Incredibles, Mr. Incredible, after he's been married for a while and has kids, and he's kind of a shell of who he was when he was a superhero. And that's kind of what they did with this character, except he never gets that moment.
Got out of it.
He never gets that moment where he gets to be the superhero again.
Yeah.
And so, I really feel like that was a big waste. Whether they'll ever go back and do anything with that character or not, I don't even know. I don't know if that was the last we've seen of the Red Guardian, or if there's even a possibility of getting a younger version of the character somewhere down the road for something.
And I couldn't see why we would want to do that. I mean, they may show up in Hawkeye for a minute. Yelena may be in touch with them during that show. We know she's going to be in Hawkeye. They could be too.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see. There was a report the other day I saw where they said that, Kevin Feige had said it was possible we hadn't seen the last of him or Melina, but that was one of those really ambiguous, we might let them pop up again kind of deals, but they're not ruling it out. So.
Yeah. But I mean, pretty much everybody else in this movie, I mean, Rachel Weisz was fantastic, which
always
don't expect anything less.
No.
I love a lot of what they did with this show, and the Red Guardian is my big gripe.
Yeah. It is mine too. Outside of, like I've already talked about it, outside of the moment I talked about, I just thought he was played as a big goofball. They just played him for comic relief, and it got, which plays at certain moments, but they overdid it.
Even kind of the moment where they're where he's kind of trying to talk about his past, when he fought Captain America, does he ever talk about me? And it's like,
y'all never fought, dude.
And Natasha, and Natasha just kind of looks at him like, you're lying. Like, so even his glory days, he's lying about.
And that aspect of it, yeah.
Unless they fought during World War II, which I don't know if you're going to do that and have allies fighting each other.
No, well, they wouldn't. He wasn't alive in World War II. He told the people in the prison it was like 1983.
Right. Now, they could have had him, fight Isaiah Bradley.
Maybe.
But I don't know. I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense that he could have fought Isaiah Bradley, but Isaiah Bradley wasn't Captain America.
Yeah, correct. And the impression we got from Falcon and Winter Soldier was Bradley got locked up during Korea. Whenever he went and freed those guys was the Korean War.
Yeah. So who knows? I don't really know about some of that, but things I liked
he just wanted to know if he'd ever talked about him because he had heard about him and had the same kind of respect for him that he does for Cap. You know what I mean?
Right. Maybe so. So I really like, action sequences. This movie's phenomenal. Like it does the kind of like Jason Bourne action flick very, very well.
Very well. And they go beyond that. The damn scene where the Red Room is falling out of the sky is just fantastic. Right. The whole as far as an action sequence, stunt sequence, CGI, whatever you want to, that whole sequence is fantastic.
Right. And I know some people haven't liked that scene actually because it's too outlandish. And I'm like,
it's a superhero movie, dude. Chill out. Right.
It's a comic book film. Like, yeah. And it's, it's not like they don't do stuff that outlandish in like the Mission Impossible movies. I was just about to say
the Mission Impossible. It's a Mission Impossible stunt. Yeah. It really is. On a certain level, it's very, they do that kind of stuff. Whenever she leaps off the building with that parachute, now first of all, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, right, is a parachute just laying on the deck? Like, that didn't happen. But either way, again, it's a comic book movie. Suspend disbelief a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy that whole sequence.
So as far as other things you liked, I mean, we talked about the action, we talked about the family dynamic. I thought the acting was all very, very good. I love the comedic moments. Marvel tends to do a pretty good job with that. Sometimes they overextend a little bit, but I felt like they did a good job with that in this one. I didn't like the Red Guardian. Really the big moment, the make or break for most people on this show seems to have been Taskmaster.
Okay.
And of course, some of that is because some people are just looking for something to be mad about.
Right. Because I'm not mad about it at all. I know you got a slight issue.
I have a slight issue, but it's not the issue that a lot of people have with it.
Right. So I'm going to let you say your piece first then.
Okay. So what I don't like about the character, I know a lot of people have been really, really upset about some of or a lot of people are just plain upset because they gender swapped the character. And to me, I mean, whatever, it's not a character I really even know very well. I'm completely indifferent on that. I think that this character, I think it works for that to be who she is, for the character to be female for this movie. And I think you get some of the big, get some really, really cool moments that really drive the point of this film home because of who that character is. My only gripe is that I know a lot of people really, really do like Taskmaster a lot. And like, you sort of, I don't want to say you totally wasted the character because you do get some emotional moments and some emotional drive to this film from the character. But I think you could have just as easily had that character just been another widow. And not use Taskmaster here. It's like, to me, it feels like they use Taskmaster just for the advertising.
Okay.
But again, that's sort of a nitpick because overall I like the character. I just think that she could have been any other widow and you could have driven the same point home.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, you didn't have to name her Taskmaster. You're right.
But at the same time, you did want to do the kind of the scarred face and everything, what she became because of other people's choices. Yep. And, with the scarred face and everything, her being a widow doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, for what it's worth, this is a nitpick. This is me nitpicking the movie.
Yeah,
because overall I like what they did with the character,
and I do too. I have absolutely. I don't even have the nitpick with it, and I'm going to tell you something.
Well, real quick, I want to address this because I think, Nick, that this is really going to serve as an origin for Taskmaster. She didn't talk while she was activated, while she was under the influence of the brainwashing. The first thing she did when she was broke out of the brainwashing was speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that you might get to see that quippy version of this character somewhere down the road.
Right. And I'm just going to touch on this too. I have always said just be true to the essence of the character. Taskmaster is, like Nick said, quippy. Well, I think you've got a point. If we see her again in the future, we may get some more of that. You can liken it to Deadpool. Everybody hates Deadpool. The Deadpool we got in Origins Wolverine, because they took his mouth away, right?
Right.
We finally got the Deadpool now, and everybody's happy. Mm-hmm. But they just completely ruined that character in Origins.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah. I don't necessarily feel like that's what we've done here. Obviously, I got no problem with the gender swap. Do not care. Like I said, I've always just said be true to the essence of the character. That'd be male or female, just as long as, Peter Parker needs to be a teenager from Queens. He's guilty over his Uncle Ben's death, and he's full of quips whenever he's fighting, because it's actually nervous chatter is what it is.
Right.
He's an awkward teenager. Captain America needs to be, honestly, the Cap we got in the movies. That's Captain America.
For sure.
That you just be true to the essence of the character. So for this, the only thing I can say or see where someone has a problem with it is you sort of took away the autonomy of the character.
Yeah.
And I have no issue with it. I'm going to tell you why. But the reason people would is because that character is also he's a planner in the comics. He's I don't know if mastermind is overblown it, but he's a planner. He's the leader. That's who that guy is in the comics. That's not what we got in this movie. But the emotional impact we got from that character's story arc makes it worth it. They paid it off 100%. Did they need to call her Taskmaster? No, probably not. But it's a cool look.
Yeah.
You needed to cover her face. You need to keep her identity secret till the end of the movie so that you got that impact. They didn't do a very good job keeping that secret. As soon as Marvel cast that actress, we all knew who she was. But still, the way it was written, it should have played well. So I like this version of Taskmaster. I'm glad we got what we got. I got no problems with any changes I made to the character. I'm going to tell you, the people who are really upset that we got this Taskmaster are the ones who went and bought Avengers 196 whenever the character got announced, thinking they were for some $8 million. Because that book ain't going up no more.
Right.
That's really, and let's be honest, that's there. Nick seems and sounds like he probably really is a fan of the character. I'm going to tell you, and Nick will probably tell you too, there aren't a whole lot of them. Yeah. There is no big uproar of Taskmaster fanatics out there beating the drum about they ruined their favorite character. That is a C-list character at best. So you get a lot of fake uproar about this kind of crap. And a lot of times it's people who don't like you already mentioned, they don't like that they gender swapped it because they just want something to gripe about, that we can't have a white male take a lead in the movie no more. They're gentrificationing everything in the world now. And we fucking hate it. Now screw y'all, man. Chill out. You get the people, like I said, who want the value of their book to go up.
Right.
You get there's not going to be a true Taskmaster fandom uproar over any of this crap. I promise.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean it's a lot of times this stuff just kind of becomes, a rally cry for, right now it's a rally cry for people that hate everything Disney.
Yep.
Because those people exist. I'm not going to say if you didn't like this movie, that's fine. I certainly have gripes with it myself, but I think overall it's a good movie. But
I do too.
If you hate this movie, I mean, that's more power to you. I don't.
You got your personal opinion.
Right. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, we don't even agree with each other a lot on this show, on certain things. So, I don't begrudge anybody that doesn't like it, but don't decide you don't like it before you go see the movie.
Right. No, it's a good movie.
It is.
It touches my top tier. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoyed it that much. Yet whatever issues I have with this movie, Yelena masks them all. All of them. She is just brilliant. She's fantastic. It's a fantastic character. It's a fantastic actress. The relationship between her and Natasha is just beautiful. I can't praise that aspect of this movie enough.
Right. Yeah, and we've got a lot of, it'll be interesting to see what they do, if they do anything with these characters going forward, whether it be Taskmaster or any of the other widows that are being freed. You're basically setting a mind-controlled army free. So you've got any number of characters that could pop up working for any number of other organizations within the MCU. So that are coming out of this. So I love a lot of what they did. I love the continuation. I love the personal story that they went back and did for Black Widow. I still think that it's a shame this movie didn't happen several years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It should have been. We should have gotten this movie before the first Avengers. I actually believe it would have been a different movie. It would have been a different movie. You wouldn't have been able to play with the same plot points you play with now. Right. But Black Widow, I would have loved to have seen Black Widow get a solo film before the first Avengers.
Right. So what would you say to the other big gripe for this movie, and the reason a lot of people are, the reasoning behind a lot of people saying they won't see this movie is that there are no stakes. Because we already know what happens to Natasha.
Well, how do you explain to them what the stakes are without you just go see the movie? That's complete bullshit. I'm sorry.
No,
what else you want me to say? That's crap.
It is.
Who cares? Actually, who would care anyway? You're getting to go see Natasha be a badass for 120 minutes. Go watch the movie.
The Phantom Menace was one of the biggest movies on the planet. And we knew what was going to happen to pretty much everybody in that movie.
Thank you. What a wonderful point.
I just don't like that argument that there are no stakes. This movie has its own set of stakes, and it has its own set of stakes that don't even revolve around Natasha. Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff happens in this movie is going to play in movies and TV shows going forward.
Yeah. So there are stakes. And if that's the reason that you're not seeing this because you already know what happens to Black Widow, then I would say
you didn't really want to see it anyway.
You either didn't want to see it or quit worrying about that and go see it, because there are stakes to this film that are going to help shape the MCU going forward in a post-Endgame MCU. But I think that this movie delivered a lot of emotional impact that a lot of Marvel movies haven't done, frankly. The intro to this movie, just the lead up to the title card.
God, I'm not gonna lie to you. My second watch through, I had to fast forward that. I'm not gonna. I'm not lying. That was an emotional wreck.
Mm-hmm.
The first 10 minutes of this movie.
Right, and it was a superb use of music as well.
Mm.
You know, it's the first 10 minutes of this movie are very emotionally impactful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't know if that'll ring true for everyone. But
right.
like, you know, the use of, you know, the use of music, the use of American Pie, you know, a song that's just all about the loss of innocence.
Yep.
And then and then the opening credit scene with what all was done to the Black Widows, you know, their training. And it's, you know, the undertones to child trafficking and a lot of that stuff that goes on in this movie. It's, there's more heart and soul to this movie than I think some people are letting on.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I'm anxious to see it again. We actually saw it in the theater, and to see it in the theater again, I would have to drive another 2 hours. So I haven't done that. So eventually I will get to watch it again, but I'm not sure when. Although I need to go back to the movies because I need to go down and see. I want to go see Snake Eyes.
Yep, I do too. The trailers and I had no interest in Snake Eyes. I'm not gonna lie. The trailers have won me over. These trailers are really good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the trailers for it look fantastic. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go see it. But yeah, when they first announced it, I was like, I don't care about that. But
no, I didn't either.
But do you have anything left to add on Black Widow before we wrap up? I mean, we didn't go. I mean, there are a few spoilers in here, but not like heavy.
Yeah, we didn't
spoilers.
go heavy. We didn't get real deep into anything. No, I mean, just as far as our general thoughts go and my overall impression of it, I think we touched on all that.
Awesome. Well, unless anybody I don't know who's still hanging around in the chat.
I probably ran Nick off. He's mad at me now.
I don't think.
Oh no, there he is.
I think Nick. I think Nick's still here. So, does anybody that's still in the chat have any questions before we wrap up? I think it may just be Nick.
Probably so. Our one loyal fan. Who listens to the whole network.
I don't know how you listen to that many, Nick, but we sure do appreciate you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up for the day. Daniel, before we wrap up, where can people find you online?
I am Dan C. Peeps on Twitter. All right. And whenever He-Man Revelation comes out next week, I'm going to be tweeting a lot.
Oh, is that next week?
That 23rd.
Okay.
Yep. I'm excited for that one. I feel like I'm the only one.
I'm going to watch it. I hadn't decided how I feel about it yet, but
I'm pumped. I'm probably more pumped than I should be. I'm going to wind up let down. Won't be the first time Kevin Smith let me down. but I'm going to watch.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up, and I don't know when we'll be back. When do we have something? I mean, I guess we could talk He-Man on here next week because we don't have anything else. The next thing we have coming up that we would typically cover here is going to be Marvel's What If,
right?
Which looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'm
not quite as excited about it because it's animated and it's not really part of our big overarching story, but there's some cool looking stuff in there, and they did a great job with the animation from what I've seen so far.
Right.
So
we'll find something to talk about next week. I promise. we'll do one of those shows like we used to do in the old days where we just got on here and went, "Hey, what's everybody watching?" and we'll just start talking to each other if we have to. That always works.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. You can find us at the sciencefictionary.com. You can find us at sci_fictionary on Twitter. And as always, please go check out red5network.com. for our podcast and all of the rest of the Red 5 podcast family. And until next time, for all time, always.
Oh my gosh.
This podcast is part of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts, visit red5network.com.